Welcome back to Truck Tech, everyone. This week, we are taking a little bit of a different look at autonomous trucking. Most of the time when we write about it here at FreightWaves, we focus on the level 4 truck people, the people with high autonomy that essentially want to remove the driver from the cab and, have the trucks work on sort of hub to hub, middle mile efforts, and then, be met by a real driver at either end, either to bring the load up or to pick the load up when it gets there. This week, we're going to take a little bit of a different look at sort of a semi-autonomous approach to autonomous trucking with David Liu, who is the CEO and co-founder of Plus. Now, we'll talk with David in just a minute. Got a few headlines for you first. So, Workhorse is going to try again on Friday to get the rest of the votes that it needs to increase the number of authorized shares in the company. This is a tactic that we're hearing more and more of for companies that have trouble sort of accessing the capital markets right now. Workhorse earlier this week adjourned its special meeting where it was hoping to get 50% plus one vote of a bid to authorize 250,000 new shares in the company. Now, these numbers sound really big, but essentially what they amount to for shareholders is a form of dilution down the road as these new shares are registered, why the people who own the current shares find that their value has gone down. But Workhorse is very close to getting approval. They don't need too much more to get it done, and they'll count those votes again on Friday. On the same vein, over at Lightning eMotors, we saw earlier this week that this electric startup did manage to get actually an overwhelming approval to issue about 20% new shares in the company that will go to that will go to a hedge fund that that will make money available or cash available for Lightning to continue to scale its business in electric buses and electric shuttle buses and things like that. As I said, these tactics are getting pretty common for companies that have a lot of debt or don't have a lot of cash on hand. We just saw this go through over at Nikola just last week, earlier this month, I should say, when they were able to double the number of their authorized shares to 1.6 billion from 800 million shares. That took a little bit of help from the Delaware government to get that done. That's the state where Nikola is registered, but they now have access to new shares to sell and raise capital. So we'll keep an eye on this. It's something that, as I say, we're seeing more and more of. Also, Mercedes-Benz trucks, which is a part of Daimler Truck, is reporting some pretty interesting results from testing on the truck that you see on the screen, which is the e-Actros 600. This is the next generation of the e-Actros, and they've just finished hot weather testing in Spain on this truck. Basically, it came through, I guess in very good shape. This truck will do about 310 miles in a single charge and can be recharged in about 30 minutes. So these are things, the reason we bring this to you is because this truck and the Freightliner e-Cascadia are very similar, kind of engineering twins, really. And basically what that means is that when the truck finally gets over here as a Freightliner, around 2025, you should be looking for kind of similar numbers. But this is good news for the Mercedes-Benz truck folk in Europe. Okay, so let's move on to our guest today. I haven't talked to him in a while, and we welcome in David Liu. David, great to have you back. Good to see you.
Thank you, Alan. It's great to be here.
I think we saw each other very briefly at the ATA last year. I believe that's where it was. It might have been the ACT Expo longer ago than that, when it was still in Long Beach. But really glad to have you on the show. We haven't talked, as I said, in a while. And Plus is one of these companies that we really do need to spend a little bit of time and help people understand, I think, how you're doing your business. You're in the autonomous or semi-autonomous space. And I guess as we get started here, I sort of want to understand, and I want our audience to understand sort of how you're looking at the business. You have done some things a little differently from the companies, as I said at the top, that we cover. So can you walk us through sort of this level 2 plus and where level 4 high autonomy fits into what you're doing?
Sure, happy to do that. So Alan, we've known each other for years, and we have always been a believer of the progressive approach. We believe that technology advancement is really an evolutionary process. So we have one technology stack software that really powers different use cases in the transportation automotive space. We have a use case that powers the driver in use case. We have a product there called L2+++ Drive. And then we have a use case utilizing the same software stack to power the L4 use case for driver out transportation. And the product there is called Super Drive. And with these two products, we're able to get a lot of traction serving different set of customers with different goals.
Now, David, Plus doesn't often get named among the autonomous truck developers with, SuperDrive, which is actually, I probably should know it, but it's a newer name to me. I've been using Plus Drive all this time. Yet, as we move into sort of the commercialization phase for some of these companies, and we'll talk about the fact that there's fewer of them than there used to be later on, but it would appear that you're quietly succeeding on the Plus Drive side with the technology that you're offering. You're also obviously, globally doing tryouts, I guess, of the Super Drive. Is the characterization of the company as an ADAS or semi-autonomous provider accurate? Is it frustrating at times because you don't get lumped in with some of the other level 4 players?
I don't think it's frustrating. I think the fact is we do have two product lines. We have a product line focusing on, call it semi-autonomous applications with driver in trucks that we provide value add on safety and driver comfort as well as fuel saving. That's where Plus Drive focuses on. On the driver out L4 space, our product is Super Drive. And the commercialization, the really scalable commercialization of Super Drive are still a little bit ways off. So with our partners in the space, we are really still on the pilot phase, right? We're developing the product along with our partners and trying to figure out what is the most attainable path to get to real scalable deployment. That's why you hear a little less about Super Drive on the commercialization front.
All right. Well, now we're getting used to the term, and I think it'll come off my tongue a little easier, Super Drive, because I know that just recently, I think last week, you announced the pilot runs in Australia with Transurban, and you've also talked about doing, this testing, I guess, with Super Drive with Iveco in Europe, I believe. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong there. But why has Plus decided to do its level 4 testing outside the U.S. rather than here? Is there any reason for that?
So we're extremely excited about our partnership with Transurban and Iveco from a year ago. So Transurban, for many of the folks that know them, it's a large infrastructure road operator headquartered in Australia. They own and operate a bunch of toll roads in Australia. They also have some operation in the United States. They own some toll roads on the East Coast. So they are a like $30-40 billion company that's very, very established. And they are looking at the future of their smart infrastructure and how would, call it the autonomous vehicles impact the future of the transportation. How is that going to be working together with the smart infrastructure they're building today? And so that's the project that we're working with them on to really try to shape the future of that autonomous transportation.
And yet, Texas, New Mexico, places like that, certainly not California. That's something else we probably won't get to. But there are a number of places that are, in fact, being set up for the testing. Has been thought given to, testing SuperDrive in this country, or will you do it as part of the Transurban project, or how do you think that'll work out?
So you will be hearing more on that front. So we are also doing projects in the United States, and you'll be hearing some announcement in the coming month. So we are, we have projects in the United States. We were working on obviously in Europe and Australia. So we do have a global footprint on that front.
Okay. And you don't want to tell me any more today, do you? All right, I'll let you go on that. But here, now you announced Velocity about a little over a year ago as your aftermarket supplier to upfit the Plus drive into with the semi-autonomous features into the trucks that you described. You've added some partnerships with Luminar for LiDAR, Bosch for safety systems. How many installations has Velocity or Plus now done? And or if you don't want to give that number, although I hope you do, how many fleets are now running Plus Drive?
Yeah, so that have to do with the Plus Drive, the call it level 2 plus product line. And on that
Right.
front, we have flagship fleets that we have deployed our retrofit product with. And we really use that as a demonstration of the capability of our product. But our focus has been on uh, trying to scalably deploy that product. And our focus has been on getting the technology pre-installed at OEM and working with the tier ones collaboratively to provide that technology to the OEM at a scalable fashion. That's why we have partnership with Luminar. More recently, we announced a partnership with Bosch, and that's how we're going to be able to go to market with Plus Drive product at a scalable fashion.
Where would you say you are on the scaling at this point? I mean, would you, a year into the Velocity partnership, a little over a year, I know you very definitely did not answer either of those questions, David, about the number of fleets or the number of installations. Can you be a little more specific in terms of where you are on that spectrum?
Yeah, so on the retrofit market side, we're taking a less aggressive approach. So we're only signing up flagship fleets at a sort of pilot speed, right? So these are we're talking about dozens, and in most cases, no more than 100 type of installation for on the retrofit market side. And then on the OEM pre-install side, we're working with the tier ones and OEMs proactively right now, trying to build this type of system into their next generation product releases. So
Okay.
whenever their
So
next
you are, I'm sorry.
whenever their next generation trucks coming out, hopefully some of these trucks will have Plus Drive pre-installed.
Okay, so this is something that it does get to a question that I think actually I have a little lower in my things I wanted to ask you about, but that is this idea of having a manufacturing partnership. There's a lot of people in this space who feel that's critically important, and of course, if you look at say Aurora Innovation, they're working with Packard, they're working with Volvo. You've got Torque, of course, is an independent subsidiary of Daimler. And, so there's a couple of examples. Do you see yourself essentially having a manufacturing partnership? For example, I know early on you did a lot of work with Navistar. Navistar was working with Too Simple, no longer is. Would you see Navistar as a possible sort of partner for you?
Yeah, so we definitely think that OEM play a critical role in enabling an autonomous future. That's why we work with. We believe that it takes an industry or ecosystem to actually make it happen, and that's why we work with the tier ones, the OEMs, the fleets, the road and infrastructure providers, and everybody in the ecosystem in the value chain to jointly enable the autonomous future. Plus, it's really positioned as a technology provider to the industry. So rather than looking at ourselves as a autonomous operator, we provide technology to our partners, whether that being a OEM or a infrastructure provider. We are the technology, or more on the software cases, we are a software technology provider to the partners to enable the autonomous transportation capability.
So this idea then of essentially having redundant chassis and things like that, is that not something that, as a technology provider, use your words, is that not something then that you see yourselves needing to really be concerned with? I mean, having that redundant chassis and all the things that basically make autonomy work, when you don't have a human driver.
I think redundant chassis is absolutely a must-have to make driverless transportation to work, but it's not something that we have capability or capacity to work on. Right, that's why we partner with folks who have a lot of value add to that on the OEM side and on tier one side to provide redundant chassis, which is a critical component to enable fully driverless trucks. But in addition to redundant chassis, there are other stuff that's needed to make driverless transportation to happen, right? On the infrastructure side, on the regulation side, on some others enabling technology side, the scope is quite big. And we focus on what we do the best, which is enable the autonomous driving software, and then we have partners worry about the rest of it to jointly make this future happen for everybody.
How do you feel about the timeline? And I don't need to pin you down here, but we do have a couple of companies, Kodiak and excuse me, not Kodiak, but Aurora and Too Simple. And I hope we have enough time to get into that in a moment. But those two have sort of announced timing for late next year to do a commercialized route, not many routes, but a commercialization. How far away do you really think we are in that approach or in that pursuit, especially from the plus side? Are you comfortable with an estimate?
Yeah, I can give you a sense of where we think things stand, right? So, we've been working with our partners in this space on piloting, call it autonomous operations. In most cases, with a safety driver in the cab, right? So we've been piloting this on, individual specific routes and in different type of constrained ODD setup. For instance, with Transurban, they are a toll road operator out in Australia, so they have some part of their road infrastructure that they can provide for this type of pilot operation. So for these type of pilot operations happening today, and what we're looking at is how do we expand ODD? How do we expand the reliability? How do we bring down the cost of these, call it pilot autonomous operations, over time? But it's going to be a process to really scale this type of, call it deployment to make them commercially viable, and it's going to take however long it's going to take. So from the previous topic we just talked about, for this to be truly scalable, you need redundant chassis. So we should ask the OEMs and tier ones what their timeline is to be able to enable redundant chassis, right? Because without that, we're not going to have scalable deployment of driverless transportation.
Okay. A couple of years ago, David, I think it might have been the first time we talked, you told me, originally I thought the number was 10, but you told me that Plus One had 8 billion miles of real world experience with safety drivers before removing the driver from the cab. Is this still among the things you're working toward?
Yeah, so we believe that real world testing and real world data gathering is critical to advance the technology, both from a maturity as well as from a reliability and validation point of view. So we continue to embark on that road. That's why we have commercial real operations out there to continue to validate and improve and to mature our technology. I think that this road is it's a road that we have to travel down. So we still hold true that we think it's critical, not only doing simulation, but also to gather real world testing data and testing validation.
Do you have a number of sort of what you have in the bank so far in terms of real world miles? Can you bring us up to speed on that?
Unfortunately, I can't really disclose that because that's confidential client information. So because it's these are our technology deployed on our customer fleets.
Right. I want to switch over, spend our last few minutes here on finances. You haven't announced any new fundraising in more than 2 years, and I realize you're privately held, but can you sort of discuss your capital situation at this point in terms of, do you have what you need? And
yeah, so the company is really well positioned financially. Fortunately, in 2021, we raised a few $100 million prior to announcement of our SPAC transaction. So despite the what happened on the capital markets in the last 2 years, the company we're extremely well positioned in terms of financial runway, and we're because of all the commercial traction we're getting recently in the last couple of years, we're also hearing a lot of positive feedback from the investment community. So I think once the capital markets, it looks like it's starting to turn different ways, and I think we continue to keep our eyes open on what do we want to do on the capital market front. But our focus is really on continue to advance our technology, continue to get traction with our commercialization with our customers, and that has always been our focus.
Sure, and I guess that's something I left a couple of questions behind. It would seem that with Plus Drive and with being in hundreds and thousands of trucks, I think you indicated, you would be bringing in some revenue at this point. Are you gross margin positive at this point?
So we are getting to gross margin positive now. Here's the thing, right? With retrofit business, the reason we are not scaling that business up is because the high cost of doing retrofits. It's really not a great way to scale that financially. That's why we focus on now starting to provide technology to the tier ones and to OEMs to have these technology pre-installed in trucks. So we become a supplier to the OEMs. That'll help us, reduce the cost of scaling.
Okay. I didn't ask it, but I got to ask it straight out. How do you think about Plus when you consider going public at this point? You said the markets are beginning to turn. We're starting to see some evidence of that, and that you've got some of the investment community, rooting for you at least. How do you feel about Plus going public? Do you think that happens, or?
I think that time will tell. So far, I think the capital market on the IPO front is not great, and that's what the bankers and the financial investors have been telling us. But from a business traction point of view, we're getting a lot of traction. So I'm quite excited about the prospect of our business. And then when the timing is right, we'll continue to evaluate that and look at if there's a good time for us to go public.
Sure. Well, in some ways, you probably aren't lamenting the fact that your SPAC didn't work out, because it certainly hasn't gone well for some other companies. Notably, Embark comes to mind there, and of course, Waymo Via has pulled back. It's interesting that you have seen the same thing I have, which is the shakeout in the autonomous space. Did that happen sooner than you expected? Did you see it coming and expect it to be this quick?
I don't know about that. I think it kind of proved what we thought was the right strategy for ourselves, right? So we have always believed in a few things. One is we believe in a evolutionary progressive approach to technology. We believe in a focus on commercialization. We believe in a focus on customers and value add and creating positive value for our customer utilizing our technology. So I think as long as we focus on those things, we will be able to navigate a lot of these, call it curveballs that's being thrown at us.
Sure. Well, you know what? We're running out of time already. I want to try to get two more in for you. One, a couple of years ago, we talked about Plus and Too Simple, and you guys seem to go back and forth, a little bit. You told me at one time that you sort of forced them out of China to focus on the U.S. Now they seem to be going the other direction. Where do you stand in your partnership, joint venture, I think it is, with First Auto Works, and that they were actually doing, online installations? Is that correct for you?
Yeah, so I don't know if I said that we forced Too Simple out of China, but I have tremendous respect for them. It's a good company with good people and good technology, and autonomous vehicle and autonomous transportation industry is a big industry, and every company has their own strategy and focus on what they want to do. So I'll leave that to themselves, right? I can't really comment on their strategy. But what we've been always focusing on is looking at how do we enable our partners and customers to chase after that vision of providing a safer and greener transportation for the world. And
Right.
and we're doing that globally. So we're doing that in the US, in Europe. We have now starting to have a project in Australia, but also previously we had a business in China. And
Right.
while we're doing that, we start realizing it's really difficult or complex to run a global business. Every market has got its own market dynamic, its own ecosystem. Is in some cases its own different business model. In terms of our China operation, we have spun that out as an independent business. So that's operating in China with its own sort of business model and vision, separate from the rest of the world. And
So
in there,
it's no longer part of Plus then, is that right?
we are a minority financial investor in that business, but we are
Okay,
not
great.
responsible for its operation anymore.
Gotcha. Well, David, I'm really sorry we're actually over. I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on. Great to catch up as we did. I probably could have done 30 more minutes with you. But folks, next week we will be looking at infrastructure again around electrification with the folks at Volterra and some of the local regulations that are kind of needed to help move along some of the infrastructure issues. We hope you'll join us for that. You can catch this episode of Truck Tech and all the others on the FreightWaves YouTube channel. Go to shows and then click Truck Tech, and you'll get a full playlist of what's available for you there. We hope you'll take advantage of that, and we will see you next time.